Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Before we begin, we're doing things slightly out of, in a different order today. I'll be giving an English talk called a Bayan. And then MCC has an important announcement that it's making. And then I'll be giving a very, very short Arabic khutbah. And then we'll have the prayer, inshallah. Praise be to God who guided us to this, and we would not have been guided had not Allah guided us. Our success is only by God. We grasp on only to God, and we have confidence only in God. In God we trust, and upon God we rely. Praise be to God, we seek His help, we seek His guidance, we seek His forgiveness. We take refuge with God from the evils of ourselves and our misdeeds. Those whom Allah guides cannot be misguided, and those whom Allah misguides shall never find a friend to guide them. I testify that there is no God but Allah, alone and without partner, and I testify that our Master and Prophet Muhammad is His slave and messenger. May Allah send prayers and peace and blessings upon that noble messenger, that kind-hearted man sent as a mercy to the world. Allah asks us in the Quran, Ya ayyuhal insan, ma gharraka bi rabbika al-kareem. He asks us, O mankind, what has deluded you about your generous Lord? If you ever speak to an atheist about God, a strange thing will happen. They will look out at the world, and they'll look back at you, and they'll be flustered. They're confounded. They can't believe, looking out at the world, that you can believe in God. And so they'll point to the world and they say, look at this world. The suffering, the pain, innocent children that are being killed, criminals and thieves that are getting away with everything. People are racist. People are rude. The arc of history bends towards oppression and violence and hate. So how could you believe in God? So the atheist looks at the world and they see a proof against God. But the theist, the person that believes in God, and the monotheist, the person that believes in one God, and especially the Muslim, the person that believes in Allah, we look at the world and we can't help but see a proof of God. Yes, children die, but there are people of God that are working to put an end to that, and those children go straight to paradise. Yes, many criminals live unpunished, but they live unpunished in this world, and their souls are slowly withering away, and in the afterlife, they will not get away. So this whole world, we have to understand, is like a tapestry. You can zoom in and you can focus on one single thread, and you might wonder, well, this is a very ugly color. Why is that here? But if you step back and you look at the tapestry as a whole, you marvel and you can't really find any fault. And this is what Allah tells us to do. مَا تَرَى فِي خَلْقِ الرَّحْمَنِ مِن تَفَاوُتٍ. You will see no incongruence in the creation of the merciful. فَارْجِعِ الْبَصَرَ هَلْ تَرَى مِن فُتُورٍ. So turn back your gaze. Do you see any fault? ثُمَّ ارْجِعِ الْبَصَرَ كَرَّتَيْنِ. And then look again and again. ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو حسير. Your sight will only return to you humbled and weary. So why is it then, we should ask, why is it that the atheists, when they look at the world, they don't see God? And the reason for that is that because they've already made the decision not to believe. They do not want to believe, and therefore they do not see. Allah tells us in the Hadith Qudsi, أَنَا عِنْدَ ظَنِّ عَبْدِي بِي. I am as my servant thinks I am. So if you believe that God is present in this world, if you believe that God exists, then when you look out into the world, you will see God. You will see signs of His presence and of His care and of His wisdom. But if you do not believe that God exists, if you very shut off your mind to that notion because of what you believe is right and what you believe is fair and proper, because you see suffering out in the world and you say, God would not have done this, or because you disobey God and you sin and therefore you start feeling guilt and you can't escape it, so you tell yourself, I should not be feeling this guilt. And then you prime yourself not to see God, no matter how much you look, because if you saw God, you would feel that guilt even more. And so we blind ourselves. And this is how Allah has created us. This is why Ibn Ata'illah, one of our great scholars, said in a wisdom, he said, مَا قَادَكَ شَيْءٌ مِثْلُ الْوَهَمِ. Nothing will lead you on like false belief. So if we are deluded about the nature of the world, about who God is, about who we are, if we are deluded about those things, then we will not be able to see reality and act accordingly. We will be lost. A very good example of this, of us not understanding reality, is this idea, it's very popular, of the prosperity gospel. If you're prosperous, that must mean that God is pleased with you, that you're doing something right. But if you have difficulties, if you're impoverished, then God must not be pleased with you. He's punishing you for some reason. It's a very popular idea, but Allah tells us this is not the case. فَأَمَّا الْإِنسَانُ إِذَا مَبْتَلَاهُ رَبُّهُ فَأَكْرَمَهُ وَنَعَّمَهُ فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَكْرَمَنِ. As for man, when his Lord tries him by being generous and giving him blessings, he says, my Lord has ennobled me. وَأَمَّا إِذَا مَبْتَلَاهُ فَقَدَرَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقَهُ فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَهَانًا. But when Allah tries him and restricts his provision, he says, my Lord has debased me. But Allah immediately attacks this notion. He says, Kalla, no. Allah has not ennobled you by giving you something. And He has not debased you. He has not humiliated you by taking something away from you. But Allah is telling us in this ayah what exactly it is that He is doing. He's testing us. He's testing our response. Testing, are you awake and alert and discerning, and therefore able to react in the way that Allah wants you to react in any given situation? Or are you asleep and heedless and deluded, and therefore you cannot react in the way that Allah wants you to? Allah tells us, سَنَسْتَدْرِجُهُم مِّنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ, that we shall slowly lead them astray from whence they do not realize. And another place in the Quran, He says, فَلَا يَأْمَنُ مَكْرَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا الْقَوْمُ الْخَاسِرُونَ. So none should feel safe from the plot of Allah except a losing people. What does this mean? We cannot feel safe. We must be awake. We must be alert. We cannot accept things at face value. Even and perhaps especially the things that we tell ourselves. We cannot settle and become complacent. This is because we have four enemies in this life. The dunya is our enemy. And shaitan is our enemy. And the nafs, the soul, is our enemy. And desire is our enemy. So shaitan will come to you and he will whisper in your ear and he'll tell you lies that sound like truth. He will tell you God is merciful and we hope for His mercy. And that's a correct statement. But if we forget that God is also vengeful and God also punishes, that could lead us to false hopes. It could lead us to complacency. If we believe this and we forget everything else, we might stop worshiping altogether because of our hope, because of Allah's mercy. And that's what shaitan wants. And that is a delusion. And the dunya will come to you and it will lie to you. It will make itself out to be the entirety of reality. It will tell you the physical world is the only world. The pleasures of this life are the only pleasures. The world is eternal, and it created itself, and it governs itself. And if we don't stop and question that, then we will believe in that. We will become enchanted by the pleasures of this world and forget the world had an origin with Allah, and forget anything outside of this world entirely. And your desires will come to you and they will lie to you as well. And they will tell you there is nothing better than achieving those desires. And they can only be achieved here and now and not in any other place or time. So you should cast aside everything that distracts you from those desires, because God would not have given you desires if He didn't expect you to act on them. And then your nafs, your lower soul, it will come to you and it will lie to you as well. It will tell you, you are great, you are virtuous. You can't learn from other people because you already know everything. You shouldn't listen to others when they disagree with you. You are generous. You're on the right path. You can do whatever you want because Allah loves you and will forgive you. And if we don't literally stop those thoughts in our head as they come to us, then we will believe them. Even if we verbally deny it, our actions will speak otherwise. And this is all forms of delusion. That's the goal of these four enemies. That we do not live a life of truth. That we do not live a life of sincerity. That we do not acknowledge reality as it is and our place in it. But to be alert and to be awake, to use taqwa, this mindful wariness, as a shield, to constantly be on guard, to question ourselves and what our souls tell us and what the world tells us, and to question the thoughts that pass through our minds. To do all of these things is to be courageous. These are difficult things. They're not easy things. They become easy over time with practice, as all things. But this is a very lofty endeavor. But one of the key virtues of the Muslim is futuwa, which is virtue and courage and chivalry and virility. And while a lot of this has associations with physical strength and with martial prowess, true virtue is in self-regulation, in not taking the easy path, but constantly remaining alert. And one of the definitions of futuwa, it starts with as-sidqu ma'al haqq, sincerity with al-haqq, which can mean sincerity with Allah, but we can read this as being even broader than that, as being sincerity to the truth, sincerity to reality. In other words, recognizing reality for what it is and acting in accordance with that. So what is it that we should do to become a fata, a person of this virtue and strength? The first thing, and perhaps the most important thing that you should do, is to test yourself. Pick any claim that you make about yourself and really think about it. Perhaps you think, I'm really smart and intelligent. Or perhaps you claim about yourself, I'm a really generous person. Or maybe for some of us we think, well, I don't make any claims about myself because I don't really think very highly about myself. But that's also a claim. And then test that claim. You're really smart. Okay. So when you believe some opinion, whether that opinion is about religion or about the law or about politics or whatever, then ask yourself, have I read the other side? Have I read third opinions? Have I read critiques? Can I respond to those critiques? And if you haven't done that, then think about why have you not done that? What belief do you hold that has led you to be so confident in what you believe? Or if you claim that you're generous, then ask yourself, what have I given up in my generosity? Do I only give in public? Do I only give to those people who are close to me? Would I ever give to someone who disagrees with me, to someone who has hurt me? Or if you say that you don't think very highly of yourself, and therefore you can't make any claims, ask yourself, is that actually true? Or is this a sort of arrogance, and I'm making a claim to humbleness and to humility? Or is it some sort of laziness and fear that's holding me back and making me unwilling and unable to really examine my own faults and my own flaws? This is an exercise that we should all be doing. Take the next week and spend some time reflecting on yourself. And the same alertness needs to be present in every aspect of our lives. If a claim is made to us, then we should not just bow down to it. We should examine it, examine the truth of that claim. Where did it come from? Who said it? And that does not mean that we should become skeptics, because skeptics doubt that we can even know the truth at all. They will reduce things often to just the material world. But we're not that. We are a people of knowledge. Islam is distinguished as a religion, as a people, as a civilization, by nothing greater than the pursuit of knowledge. That is the entire ethos of the Islamic civilization. And this is because Muslims desire to seek the truth. Above all else, to seek the truth. To seek al-haq. To seek Allah. And we want to know the world as it is, as Allah has made it. Because the world is a reflection of our God. Because through it, we can know Allah better. And the very purpose of our existence, Allah tells us, إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, to worship God. It's only to worship God. And Ibn Abbas explains this a little. He says, to know God. What that means is to know God. Because knowledge of God is the most fundamental root of worship and perfecting worship. We cannot worship properly without knowing Allah. And so we cannot be a heedless people. Allah tells us in the Quran, وَلَقَدْ ضَرَأْنَا لِجَهَنَّمَ كَثِيرًا مِنَ الْجِنِّ وَالْإِنسِ لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا وَلَهُمْ أَعْيُنٌ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ بِهَا وَلَهُمْ آذَانٌ لَا يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْغَافِلُونَ. We have prepared for the fire many jinn and humans. They had hearts which they did not use to understand. And they had eyes which they did not use to see. And they had ears which they did not use to hear. So they are like cattle. But no, they're even more astray than cattle. They are the heedless. And so Allah has given us the tools to know reality. He's given us eyes, He's given us ears, He's given us a soul, He's given us intellect. He's given us the ability to be sincere to Him by seeking the truth, which is by critically assessing the truth of ourselves and the truth of the world and the truth of God. And if we do that, we will come to one inescapable conclusion, and that is, our place in this world is to submit to Allah. Our scholars tell us that shukr, that gratefulness, in reality is to use what God has given us as God intended them to be used, meaning for His pleasure. The opposite of shukr, of gratefulness, is ingratitude, which is kufr, literally also meaning disbelief. And that is to not use what God has given us in the way that God intended it to be used. So let us be among the grateful, and among the courageous, and amongst those with futuwa and virtue and strength, who are alert and awake and are not heedless. We ask Allah to grace us with that which He loves and is pleased with.